I dare you to imagine with me what God has next for Revolution Community Church. I dare you to imagine 320. We started right here in this building where you had to take the elevator to church, drop your preschoolers off at a room right across the hall from a giant safe. I'm sure that wasn't freaky for young families. And set up signs every Sunday explaining where to park and enter the building. We even had an elevator host to make sure people arrived safe and sound, which didn't always feel guaranteed by the noise coming from the elevator shaft. Who would have imagined that we would go from a core team of 20 holding services on the third floor of a bank to an average Sunday attendance of nearly 500 with over 300 people connected in groups? I tell people all the time, I could have never imagined where God has brought Revolution Church since we started in 2010. The impact Revolution has had on this community and beyond blows my mind. As we committed ourselves to doing church different in a small town, literally hundreds of people have come to faith in Christ and have taken the next step of baptism. And some of those individuals are in leadership positions and even staff positions at the church today. Hundreds of thousands of dollars have been given and used for ministry, community impact, and community outreach. Who could have imagined God would use us to be the catalyst of a movement called United, where nearly 30 churches are coming together for one common cause? Or a Christmas stocking project that's now impacted over 2,000 students and faculty in Logansport schools with love and hope? Who would have imagined we would open a counseling center where over 100 families or individuals have been served in a little over 2 years? In the time since we started, God has done so much, but He's not even close to finished with this movement. I believe in many ways, we've only just begun.
I'm getting baptized Sunday, so I'm ecstatic. I'm ready to let go of that burden that I've carried of guilt or anger or depression or whatever it was that reflected on those past events, and just let it go. And I think getting baptized is that next stepping stone for me so that I can continue to grow in my relationship with God and just really understand His plan for me.
As I looked out over the city on a cold, clear night in November 2009, I knew the vision for Revolution Church was going to be reality. It started with the image of our city, lit up by the street lights, and in that moment, God led me to Imagine 320. I saw Logansport like I'd never seen Logansport before. Beautiful, strong, moving forward. And I knew God was calling me and a new, different church to be part of this vision. As we begin to dream big and back up our dreams with bold actions, we get to be part of the dramatic change that God is bringing to our community. We know that if we imagine it, then God will do even more than we imagine. Imagine 320 is a generosity initiative and discipleship strategy that will help fuel our vision over the next 2 years. And there are 3 parts of this vision. We're imagining 320 for our church. We know that so much more can be done with 2.5 times the space in our gathering room, seating up to 500 people and giving more opportunity for people to connect with our Sunday gathering. We will have 2.5 times the space for kids ministry, and we'll have our very first student ministry space for 6th to 12th graders. Our junior high and high school ministry is on the edge of a revolution, and having this space is going to be a huge tool in growing this ministry. Our counseling center will have a separate entrance to provide privacy and confidentiality for those we serve.
Revolution is really a welcoming place, and that's one of the things that I noticed when I first started coming. It's a casual atmosphere where it doesn't feel like people are going to jump on you and ask you a bunch of questions, and that's, one of the reasons why I continue to go. I want more people to know about Revolution, and I think it's great that we're going to move to a bigger facility where more people can come, because it's impacted my life in a good way, and I would love for other people to have that same experience.
We're also imagining 320 for our community. Our new campus isn't just for us. It's going to be used in so many ways to help our community, from the vision we have for a coffee shop open through the week and an area for kids to play. And also, part of this generosity initiative will be given away for outreach, just like we've done since the very beginning. This initiative is about our community. And we're imagining 320 for beyond. For years, we've been casting vision for more Revolution-type churches to start in small towns throughout north central Indiana and beyond. And we want to take some very specific steps in this direction. So we've seen what God can do in a small town like Logansport through a church like Revolution. We believe this same impact can be felt in small towns all over. So we want to hire an intern to be in training to start another Revolution church in a neighboring city within 2 years. And we want to use a portion of our resources to help Oak Brook, Peru, one of our partner churches, start well. So I want you to join us in taking 3 next steps to Imagine 320. Pray boldly. Ask God what you can do as individuals and as families to imagine greater things over the coming years for yourselves and our church. Give boldly. 100% engagement. We want everyone to participate and take a step on their generosity journey. And our overall goal of $2 million for Imagine 320 will resource the next 2 years of ministry at Revolution for our church, our community, and beyond. Serve boldly. Be prepared for serving opportunities throughout the 2-year initiative and encourage those who you influence to join you. Nothing in this world becomes reality without someone having imagined it first. God's vision for Revolution, God's vision for our community is beyond anything we could ask or imagine. It's that big. Will you join us as we imagine 320?
Jack, there we go. Okay, we'll just use the handheld. So we tried to get Morgan Freeman for that video. We didn't try that. Someone once said this: sometimes it's the very people who no one imagines anything of who do the things no one can imagine. And I just feel like that statement pretty much sums up my life, sums up Revolution Church, because nobody would have thought this really shy, introverted, keep to himself, just go to school to get your schoolwork done and go home kid would ever pastor a church, definitely not start a church like Revolution. God gets all the credit. He's the one that did this. And even in the early days, so many people thought there's no way a church like Revolution is going to work in Logansport, Indiana. I mean, that's way too progressive for our area. Revolution, what does that even mean? What, are you supposed to bring your musket and powder horn to church with you, or what is that? I mean, do church different. What's that even mean? That's not even proper grammar. How's that going to work? A church in a bank? A church in a storefront property next to a rent-to-own furniture store? That'll never work in small-town America. A church trying to connect with people who wouldn't normally connect with church? Come on. I mean, you're just dreaming. But here we are 7 years in. God keeps showing up time and time again with this group of nobodies that he's growing to be somebodies by his grace and for his glory. And we're at the next step in our journey. The biggest step. This is the biggest step in our 7-year history, the step of Imagine 320. This is the biggest thing we've ever tackled as a church. This is the biggest series, possibly the biggest season we've ever entered into as a church. A season where we're dreaming big dreams and backing up those dreams with bold actions, believing that God is going to dramatically change Logansport and beyond with the gospel of Jesus Christ. Are you ready for this? Are you ready for this? Yeah. I realize that for some of you, this might be your first time ever at Revolution. So glad you're here. Like Julie said, this is a great first week to be here. For some of you that are longtime revolutionaries, but maybe weren't able to be at Vision Preview Night a few weeks ago, and you're like, well, that video really helped kind of paint the picture of Imagine 320. Still not completely sure what this is all about. Well, I'm going to ask the ushers to come around at this time. We're going to be handing out what we're calling a guidebook to every person in the room right here. Every person is going to get one of these guidebooks for this series. And as you get your guidebook, feel free to kind of flip through it for a minute or so, familiarize yourself with it, look at all the different things that are in there. And I got to say this, these guidebooks, they are made possible because our steering team, specifically Julie Forgy and Joyce Mayhill, put a ton of time into creating this tool that we're going to use throughout this series. So can we give Julie and Joyce a hand for putting this together for us? And we're encouraging you to bring this every week of the series, okay? Every week of the series. I know we got distractions going on, so let's just say every week on 3. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Every week. We'll let you in. If you don't have it, we'll still let you in. But try to bring it every week because we're going to engage with that tool. There's a place for notes every single week of the series to kind of take some notes from the talk. It'll be great for life groups to take this to your life group and use it as a tool in life groups and in discussion. And there's so much in there as you're flipping through. There's some more explanation on what Imagine 320 is all about. There's a giving discipleship journey in there. We're going to get to that at another time in the series. It kind of it describes where you might be with that step of generosity and what God's next step for you might be. We're going to talk about that. There's a celebration page in there, has numbers and life change and stuff that we're celebrating. Frequently asked questions section, explanation of one fund, kind of what does this financial commitment look like? What is it all about? It explains that in there. And again, we're going to be hitting all of it throughout the series. We'll be hitting every single thing in that guidebook. We'll get into a little bit of it today. So just check it all out later throughout today. And what I want you to do right now is everybody have a guidebook. If you don't have a guidebook, raise your hand. We want to get you one. Does anybody not have a guidebook? Raise your hand. Awesome. Way to go, usher team. So what I want you to do is turn to page 11 in that guidebook. Page 11. That's where you can kind of engage with today's talk. So you can start to see, like, from the T-shirts to the guidebook to the back wall. I mean, this is a big deal. This series is a big deal. This season is a big deal. On page 11, you can take some notes. One of the things I would really encourage you to write down is this statement, because this is the big idea for today. This is everything we talk about today is going to revolve around this. The size of your imagination may be the most accurate measure of the size of your God. The size of your imagination may be the most accurate measure of the size of your God. And we're going to throw that on the screen multiple times throughout today. So if you don't get it all written down right now, it'll be up there several times. And the verse that this series title comes from, that this initiative, this 2-year process we're going through, where this comes from is Ephesians 3, verse 20. Look at what it says. Now to him who's able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine, according to his power that is at work within us. And what this verse is literally saying is, if you can imagine it, God can do more than that. If you can imagine it, God can and will do more than that. Because really, the only place in the world where God has limits is the free will mind of a human being. Think about that. Like, we limit God in our own mind, in our own imagination, and therefore sometimes we block God's bigger plans and purposes for our lives, our church, our community, and beyond, simply because we're not willing to dream big enough dreams. What I believe, and this is some opinion here from me, but what I believe has held Logansport back in many ways as a community is we just dream too small. We imagine too small. What's held North Central Indiana back as a region is we lack Imagine 320 faith. What holds churches back is a small imagination. What stops most Christ followers from being all that God calls them to be is they're unwilling to imagine impossible things for God's glory. And I read this quote this week that kind of relates to all this by Mark Batterson. He says, most people aren't in danger of ruining their lives, they're in danger of wasting them. But why? Like, why is that the case? When, like, God can do anything, right? What holds us back? Well, according to Ephesians 3, it's our unwillingness to imagine big, impossible, God-sized things. And it's so strange because, I mean, we understand, like, there's no big or small, easy or difficult to God, right? There's no possible or impossible to God. Like when Jesus walked out of the tomb on the third day, and we gave a lot of evidence to the fact that happened a few weeks ago. When Jesus walked out of the tomb on the third day, he removed the word impossible from a Christ follower's dictionary. I mean, immeasurably more is just a day at the office to God, just a normal day to God. And there comes a point in everyone's life where we have to quit living as if the goal of life is just to arrive safely at death. And we have to go after something that is destined to fail unless God shows up. And it's the same with the church. There comes a point in the life of every church where we have to quit operating as if the goal of church is to pay the bills and keep everybody in the seats happy. And we got to go after something that is destined to fail unless God shows up. So that's what this is about. So how big is your imagination? What's the size of your dream for your life, our church, our community, and beyond? Because again, the size of your imagination may be the most accurate measure of the size of your God. And to kind of test the capacity of our Imagine 320 muscle today, I want to do something. We're going to start looking at a biblical character today that we're going to look at every week of this series. That this guy doesn't get a whole lot of face time in the biblical narrative, but whenever he shows up, whenever something shows up from this character, it's big. It's a big deal. And some of you have probably heard of him. I know at least one young family at Revolution has heard of this character because they named their oldest son after him. But here's the guy's name that we're going to talk about in this series. His name is Benaiah. And Benaiah's name means this: made or built by the Lord. Pretty cool name. And we'll get more into that definition later in another week. And just to get an understanding of who he was, Benaiah was one of the bodyguards and one of the warriors, the heroic warriors that was under the rule of King David. David was the second king of the nation of Israel, and he was such a great leader that there was guys that would surround David that were willing to trade their very life for David. They would give up everything for David because he was such a good leader. One of those guys was Benaiah. And he shows up, his story is in 2 Samuel 23. And this is where we find out everything there is to know about Benaiah, pretty much. In 2 Samuel 23, let me show you the verse. Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, and by the way, when I pronounce these names, I have no idea if I'm right, so we'll just go with it, okay? Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, a valiant fighter from Kabzeel, performed great exploits. And we're going to stop right there. And if you opened your Bible to kind of follow along, or you opened your Bible app, shut it. Turn it off. That's all. Don't read ahead today, okay? You can check it out later this week, but we're going to stop right there. And what I want us to do today, I want us to just use our imagination to fill in that verse. I'm going to read it one more time. Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, a valiant fighter from Kabzeel, performed great exploits. So we get a little bit of information to kind of kickstart our imagination. We know Benaiah is from a place called Kabzeel. I looked it up this week. How it was described on the web was Kabzeel was the most remote city in the entire nation. It was in southern Judah, right at the border of Edom. Just this really small community. Benaiah was not from the sticks. He was from the twigs. That's how remote this was, all right? It's not like Logansport. Logansport's way too populated and thriving and growing for Benaiah to be from here. Benaiah's from like Anoka or New Waverly or Burroughs or Idaville or something like that. I mean, there's no fast food restaurants in Benaiah's village. There might have been a flashing yellow light where County Line Road met 400 North. That's it. That's all you get where Benaiah's from. So he's from this little place called Kabzeel, but Benaiah did not let his zip code dictate the size of his vision. Benaiah was not influenced by the small town mindset he probably grew up around, that many of us probably grew up around. Benaiah became a valiant fighter that performed great exploits because, again, it's the very people who no one imagines anything of who often do the things no one imagines. And so let's just imagine for a few minutes today, what were those exploits? What were those exploits? And if you know Benaiah's story, if you can, try to erase your memory and just let your imagination run wild. What do you think he did? What were those great exploits? The first place my imagination went to was Leonidas. The great Spartan soldier. Legend has it that he led a group of 300 Spartans against 300,000 Persians and held off the Persian army for several days to allow the Council of Greece to meet and declare war on Persia. 300 versus 300,000, which meant one Spartan soldier for every 1,000 Persian soldiers. That's great exploits, right? I mean, what if Benaiah did something like that, like 1 versus 1,000? And then I started thinking about the great Scottish warrior, William Wallace. The movie Braveheart, if you've seen the movie. William Wallace, he gathers this group of resistance forces, leads Scotland in the first war of Scottish independence against England. And he leads this band of nobodies to have a victory at the Battle of Stirling Bridge. He destroys the city of York. He cuts off the head of the king's nephew and sends the severed head to the king. That got the king's attention. They eventually capture Wallace. And in London, Wallace is brought before an English magistrate. He's tried for treason and condemned to public torture and death. And even while being hanged, Wallace refused to submit to the king, because the magistrate offers him one final chance, asking him to only utter the word mercy for one final chance. Wallace instead shouts, "Freedom!" And the judge orders his death. And that story just gives you goosebumps just hearing it, right? This guy just stands up for freedom. That's great exploits. Imagine if Benaiah did something like that. Or maybe you think of some great American war heroes like General George Washington, that on December 25th, 1776, he led troops across the ice-covered Delaware River to attack the British at Trenton, New Jersey, and created this turning point in the Revolutionary War. Or maybe you've heard of Sergeant Henry Johnson, Harlem Hellfighter, World War I. His unit came under attack in the Argonne Forest, and once they ran out of ammunition and grenades, Johnson held back the Germans with a knife, saving his entire unit. That's great exploits. Or maybe you think of Rambo. I know he's not real, okay? I know he's not real, but he was bad to the bone, wasn't he? Rambo. What if Benaiah did some Rambo stuff? And so let me give us a little bit more of a gauge to kind of help us keep imagining, because there's actually 3 other warriors in the same chapter as Benaiah that Benaiah is often associated with. They're called the 3 mighty warriors. And we just right before you hear Benaiah's story, you get their story. So let me just share a little bit. This will help us with our imagination. Look at what these 3 guys did. Check this out. Same chapter, a little bit before, 2 Samuel 23:8. These are the names of David's mighty warriors. Josheb-Basebeth, a Tekemonite, I'm pretty good at that, was chief of the 3. He raised his spear against 800 men whom he killed in one encounter. One guy, one spear, 800 enemy soldiers. No, it kills him. What? That's a great exploit. Imagine if Benaiah did something like Josheb-Basebeth, that guy. Next to him was Eleazar, son of Doijah, the Ahohite. As one of the 3 mighty warriors, he was with David when they taunted the Philistines. He taunted them, gathered at the Pasdamim for battle. Then the Israelites retreated, but check this out. But Eleazar stood his ground and struck down the Philistines till his hand grew tired and froze to the sword. You ever been like working on something and like holding something so tight you got to like pry your fingers off of it? He's fighting day and night. His hand freezes to the sword. What if Benaiah did something like that? And then there's one more of the 3 mighty warriors. Next to him was Shammah, son of Agi the Hararite. When the Philistines banded together at a place where there was a field full of lentils, Israel's troops fled from them. But Shammah took his stand in the middle of the field. He defended it and struck the Philistines down, and the Lord brought about a great victory. Such were the exploits of the 3 mighty warriors. Is your imagination getting bigger? And then look at what it says about Benaiah later in the same chapter. Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, he too was as famous as the 3 mighty warriors. So just try to imagine the things this guy did. I mean, how big are you imagining? I'm thinking like Benaiah killed like 1,000 enemy soldiers with the corkscrew on a Swiss Army knife. Like, I mean, just he with one forward lunge of the sword, 6 enemy soldiers collapse dead. Everybody, like all of Israel retreats, but Benaiah stands his ground from dusk till dawn and wins a decisive victory for David and for Israel. How big are you imagining? And the reason I'm trying to engage the imagination today is because, yes, we're going to look at what Benaiah really does. And by the way, it's more than you can imagine. You're going to read the story this week. I know you're going to want to know. We're going to look at everything he does. It's more than you can imagine. It's crazy what this guy does. But today is simply about the act of imagining. Because the first step, let me bring it back to our world, to our church, to our vision. The first step to moving our church forward into the huge future God has for us is we have to imagine it. I'm going to say it again. The size of your imagination may be the most accurate measure of the size of your God. If we can't imagine it, if we can't dream this dream together, it won't happen. All the big things God does throughout the pages of the Bible started with an Imagine3 moment. From Abraham to Joseph to Nehemiah to David to Benaiah. It started with an Imagine3 moment. And you can read more about that. I write this little thing in the guidebook you can check out. But what God wants to do in and through us as a church over the next 2 years and beyond will start with an Imagine3 moment. And I believe that moment is today. I believe that moment is right now, September 10th, 2017. Because I want us to take those Imagine3 juices and apply them to our church, our community, and beyond. Imagine the great exploits God has for you, for your family. Imagine the great exploits God has for our church, our community, and beyond. That's the three parts of the vision of Imagine3, as you heard in the video. This 2-year vision and generosity initiative, we're imagining more for our church, our community, and beyond. If you want to turn to page 4 of that guidebook, there's a rendering of our new space at 3930 East Market Street. That's going to be our new address, 3930 East Market. And below that, it shows you we're imagining more for our church, our community, and beyond. Because see, listen. Our vision is way bigger than a new building. Our vision's way bigger than a new building. This is about way more than just remodeling the old Staples space. This initiative is about being part of something where more life change happens in Logansport, North Central Indiana, and beyond. This is about dramatic change coming to our community and the next community after that and the next community after that and wherever God takes this thing. That's what this is about. And just start to imagine the more God is going to do with our church. We're imagining more for our church, 2.5 times the space to do ministry as a church. And this new building, it is simply a tool that God is going to use to help more people find and follow his son, Jesus. That's what this space is going to be. And God's going to use it in amazing ways. And it is so time for this to happen. It is so time for this to happen. This fall will mark the 3rd straight year. It happens every fall, every spring. This will be the 3rd straight year where we keep bumping up against the 500 attendance barrier. It happens all the time. We had another story last Sunday. I've shared so many stories like this. Second service, we'd already started the first song. Someone walked into the building, couldn't see a seat open or whatever, walked right back out of our gathering room because it was too hard to find a seat. We hear stories like that all the time. I shared at Vision Preview Night. I cannot challenge our church to invite somebody new next week and really mean that, because if you invite somebody new, we don't have a seat for your somebody new. That's just how, this is all our 10,000 square foot space can handle. We keep bumping up against that barrier. So just imagine a new space to seat at least 500 in the gathering room. We'll have 2 services. We'll always have at least 2 services because it gives room to grow and expand. 500 seats, 2 services. So many people can get engaged with what happens on Sundays at Revolution. Our kids' rooms are way too small for the amount of kids we cram in them. We get 2.5 times the space for that. Student ministry is going to have their own space for the first time in Revolution history. It's going to be amazing. I talked about next generation last week. This space is taking our next generation ministry to the next level. It is about investing in the next generation. It's going to be so much better for our counseling ministry. There's going to be more space to provide more ministry and more growth and more leadership development and more discipleship is going to happen in and through our church. We're imagining more for our church, but it doesn't stop there, right? We're imagining more for our community. This space, this new space is not just for us. This generosity initiative is not just for us. It is for our community. And I can officially announce this because myself and Joyce, our director of operations, had a meeting with Zach Zamara at the Bridge Church across town. Intersection Coffee Shop is officially going to open a second location in our new space when it opens. I don't know if I could be any more excited about anything than that. No. And that's not just for us. That is for our community. We want to have that other place for people to come. We have a dream to put a play area for young families and grandparents to bring kids and grandkids to this space. We went and visited a church in Holland, Michigan. It's called Engedi. They took an old Kmart building, totally rehabbed it, remodeled it, like what we're wanting to do with Staples. And they have this amazing space for kids to come. Like, because in Michigan and Indiana, 6 months of the year, city parks are closed. The weather doesn't really allow for activity outside. So we want to just have this space that serves young families through the week and on the weekends. And of course, part of this generosity initiative will be given away to and through outreach like we have since day one of our church. We give a portion of our resources away to our community. We'll always do that. And imagine with this big financial goal we have for this initiative of $2 million, think of what, like the bigger things God's going to be able to do in our community, events and organizations we're going to partner with, and just projects like, Project Christmas, and so many things that God is going to do through those resources. So this is about imagining more for our community. And finally, can you imagine what God is going to do beyond that? We're officially taking some specific intentional steps to expand the Do Church Different strategy to another city. Finally, we've been saying since day one, we know Revolution is not just staying in Logansport. It is going to expand. So we're officially taking steps. We're going to hire an intern to be in training for 2 years to prepare them to go and start another Revolution church or Revolution-type church in another community in north central Indiana. And we don't know exactly what that's going to look like. We're in a network of churches right now called New Thing. I've talked about that before. New Thing offers an internship of 2 years where someone is trained to lead themselves, lead others, and lead a church. And then after that 2-year internship, we're going to send them out. It might be another Revolution campus. It might be an autonomous church. We don't really care. We just want this kingdom of God to expand. So many communities like Logansport have zero progressive thinking, mission-minded churches. We just want more communities to experience what this community is experiencing through Revolution Community Church. So it's going to be awesome. Part of that initiative is going to that. And then part of our resources, as the video said, are also going to be given to help Oak Brook, Peru, one of our partner churches, start well. They're launching in February of 2018 another campus over in Peru. It's just amazing. Like hundreds and thousands of people are going to come to know Jesus Christ through this initiative. Can you imagine it? Yeah, go ahead. Come on. Can you imagine it? Can you imagine it? And I ask that question because if we can imagine it, here's what I know. If we can imagine it, God's going to do even more than we're imagining. And I know that because it's happened since day one of Revolution Community Church. God continues to do more than we can imagine. A few recent examples of this was evident at our outdoor baptism service a few weeks ago at the Eel River. The stories represented at that baptism were unbelievable. One of the neatest pictures from that baptism was this. This is 8 friends from high school. They're not in high school anymore, but they were in high school, and they were really good friends in high school. They all kind of went their separate ways, and over the last year, they've made their way to Revolution, weren't connected with the church, got connected with the church here, gave their life to Christ here at Revolution, and all decided to take the next step of baptism together. And then what's so neat, this week, they're starting a new life group together. It's just they're continuing to take next steps. Because baptism isn't the finish line, it's the starting point. It's launching into next steps, and their group is open. I'm going to tell you how to find out more about their group and other groups in a few minutes. One of the stories I've shared just a few times to different groups here that I've met with, I keep sharing this story because it's just an Imagine 320 story. It's more than I could imagine, is Kristen Stiegel's story. And it goes like this. So the week leading up to Easter, we wanted to get our 3-year-old son's haircut. His name is Bentley. And he doesn't do real good with haircuts usually. So we let it go a little while. It was getting kind of scraggly. And we wanted him to look good for some Easter pictures. So my wife called Designer Joe's over here and said, we'd like to get our son's haircut before Easter. And so they set us up to have an appointment with Kristen. So I decided I'm taking him by myself because if he gets a little rowdy and crying, and Shauna just wants to pick him up and hold, I'm like, you stay in that seat, get your hair cut. So I took him by myself. We're waiting there. Kristen comes up, and gets us to go back for the haircut. And I still think it's a miracle. Like, he walked back by himself, got up in the seat, like he was communicating. Like he was, not words, but like facial expressions and nodding. It was amazing. He sat there, got his haircut. We left. Easter was the next day. We were in here on Easter Sunday. In walks Kristen and her friend Bridget. We didn't talk about church. I didn't talk about being a pastor. Somehow she found out, and she came here the next day on Easter Sunday. I don't know, probably a month or two after that, we gave an invitation in the room to surrender your life to Christ. Right in the middle of the room, up stands Kristen, gives her life to Christ. A few weeks ago, she got baptized in the Eel River with 20-some other revolutionaries. So Bentley gets all the credit because he was really good getting a haircut. It's just amazing. And she talked to me the other day at Starbucks. She's like, I'm ready to take some next steps. I'm ready to start serving, and we're working on that. It's just amazing. It's Imagine3. It's a much better story than I could ever write. Something really cool that's happening today, I'm really excited about that's happening today, is our life group, our home life group, is officially branching into 2 groups. Brock and Ashley Scott, this is Brock and Ashley, and then Gracelyn, their daughter. They found faith here at Revolution probably 5 years ago or so. They've been connected in our group for a few years. They've taken next steps. They've been serving in kids ministry, Revolution Kids, and now they're taking another step of leading a group and branching out into a new group, because there's just so many more people that need connected in life groups. And Ashley's even going to be sharing her story in a certain setting in a few weeks. And just in case you're wanting to connect with them later, Brock, I think he might still be here. This is a better picture of Brock so you can find him. So he's not wearing a sombrero today. But anyway, but they're starting this new group. They're taking more steps. It's amazing to see what God's done in that family and what God's going to do as they step out and take some more steps. I just feel like everything that me and my wife and the core team of our church dreamed about Revolution becoming, God has just put a greater sign in front of it. If we could put Ephesians 3:20 into a math formula, I think it'd look like this. More than we imagine. Greater than we imagine. That's just what our God does, friends. This is who our God is. Because there are so many things that we imagined in the beginning. Like, God, we want to see people set free of addictive behaviors at Revolution. And God just blows that out of the water. Like where there's been people that have been struggling with heroin addiction or alcoholism or pill addictions for over a decade and have now been clean for a year, 2 years, 3 years. Just had a conversation between services with a couple that celebrated 2 years today. It's just amazing what God has done in setting people free of that. Like, God's like, here's your Imagine, I'll blow it out of the water. God, we want to see people come to know you through this local church. That's one of the biggest reasons we started Revolution. God's like, how about 386 people giving their life to me in 7 years? It's Imagine3. It's more than we could have ever dreamed. God, but we don't want people to stop, get to know you. We want people to live like you and radically follow you and serve and give and invest and invite others. God's like, well, how about over 300 people connected in groups, 354 people serving on teams, people moving from volunteer to leader, from leader to director, from director to staff, and just on, from believer to follower of Jesus, from Christian to disciple, from belief to action. God, we want to invest in the next generation. We imagine that. We want to invest in the next generation. And God just blows it out of the water. Well, how about investing in over 100 kids and students, newborn through 12th grade, every single week? Over 100 every single week. It's immeasurably more. Greater than I could have imagined. And that's why every time someone says something negative about this initiative, like, I don't think it's going to happen, or that's too much money, or that vision will never come to pass, just say this: you're right. God's going to do more than that. You're exactly right. That's not going to happen. God's going to blow it out of the water with what he does, because that's what he's done since day one of Revolution Community Church. And what is so important at a moment like this, at a series and a season like this, is that we realize together so much more must be done. Like, we celebrate what has been done, but we are never satisfied with what has been done. We celebrate while on the move. That's actually one of the leadership commitments at Revolution. We celebrate while moving forward. We celebrate what we're never satisfied. God has so much more to do through this little church called Revolution. We've just got started. We really have just gotten started. There's still 30,000 people disconnected from church or from Christ in Cass County alone. 27,000 people disconnected from church or from Christ in Miami County. 19,000 in White County. 15,000 in Fulton County. 14,000 in Carroll County. We keep moving forward with the gospel of Jesus Christ until those numbers are zero. We don't stop. We march ahead, radically committed to what God wants us to do. And see, here's the thing. For something to happen like this in a small town, for something this big to happen in a small town, it is going to start with dreaming it, imagining it, believing it's going to happen. I think this might be the biggest hurdle for small town in Indiana, that we've got to really believe it. We've got to really dream it, but it cannot end with a dream. I'm going to say that again. It cannot end with a dream. It must move to action. Big dreams must be backed up by bold actions in order for it to happen. So I am strongly urging you, church, don't miss a week of this series. Do not miss weeks 2 through 5, because today's about dreaming big. The rest of this series is about acting bold. And I know maybe you got something going on. You'll have to miss a week. We're going to get the audio up, the video up, so you can catch up. But it's just so different when we experience it together in a room with each other in community. Don't miss a week, because here's where we're going for the next 4 Sundays. We're going to start moving into bold actions next week. Big dreams have to be backed up by bold actions, or the vision won't go anywhere. We're going to start talking about these 3 next steps that are going to be on the wall in front of us every week. And we're believing for 100% engagement with all 3 of these next steps. That if you say, I'm a revolutionary, or I go to Revolution, or Revolution's my church, we're all taking 3 next steps together. Not 1, not 2, 3 next steps. We're praying boldly. God, lead this thing. You got to do it. We're praying. We're giving boldly. We're prayerfully thinking about the commitment God is calling us to make to this generosity goal of $2 million over 2 years. And we're going to talk all about that in this series. And then we're serving boldly. Join a team that's already happening, and be prepared for volunteer opportunities for the new space and beyond. And that's what we're going to get into in this series, but don't wait till next week to take a next step. Let me just give you 3 ideas for next steps this week. Okay, here's the first one. Big deal. Read through the entire guidebook this week. There's a lot of information with this, right? Big vision, lots of things we're thinking about, goals that we have, next steps. Read through the whole guidebook. The more we can familiarize ourselves with this, the more we're going to get it. But don't just read through it. Like, pray through it. Think through it. God, how am I, or how is our family? Engage the kids. Engage your teens. Like, in this conversation, how are we supposed to be part of this? How are we supposed to be part of this? So read through it. Engage with it. Number 2, start praying boldly right now. Today. One of the strategies for this is we would like you to put an alarm in your phone for 3:20 p.m. every day. Not a.m., we're not that bold. 3:20 p.m., okay? And here's what's going to happen. At 3:20 p.m., hundreds of people across our community are going to be praying at the same time for this vision. And I realize maybe it's 3:25 or 3:30 because something happens. It's happened many times for me. But it's just so cool. Like, as my alarm's going off at 3:20, I just bow my head for a few seconds or a few minutes, depending on what's going on at the time. I just imagine hundreds of other people joining with me in prayer for this vision. God, we need you to lead this, guide this, send people, send resources, do your thing. So pray boldly. Start that. If you want to take some more next steps with prayer, like if you feel like prayer is one of your spiritual gifts, or you want to engage more, they're having a prayer team vision night tomorrow night at Spencer Park Pavilion, just right over here, Spencer Park Pavilion down by the river. They're going to be talking about more ways to get engaged with prayer for this initiative, and just prayer in general at Revolution. So it's a dinner, 6 p.m. tomorrow night. We'd love for you to show up for that, to get engaged. And then finally, the third thing, start a group or get in a group today. And all we're asking for is a 5-week commitment. 5-week commitment. And maybe that's all it is. Maybe it stops there. Maybe it keeps going after that. We don't know. But a 5-week commitment. Here's the deal. We've got 4 new groups starting this week. We've got, I think, 21 groups that are continuing on from last week. All the groups are open. All the groups are open. We just want you to get in a group. Plenty of opportunity to get in a group. So here's what you're going to do. If you've been thinking, like, we really need to get plugged into a group, today's the day. You're going to walk out those double white doors there. You're going to turn to your left. over there by the headphones on the wall. Just go over. There's a little table there. There's some individuals going to help you get connected with a group by just finding out when you're available, what you're looking for. They're going to give your information to a group leader to connect with you and get you connected into that group. And maybe if you are not in a group and you know some other people at Revolution that aren't in a group, maybe just for 5 weeks, you'll start one. You'll facilitate it. It happens at your home. We're going to give you a DVD that will help you kind of engage with this series. You have the guidebook already. It's going to be so easy to just facilitate spiritual conversations through a group. Maybe today you start a group, and it's just for 5 weeks, and who knows? We'll see where it goes. So if you want to do that, this is the easiest Sunday it will ever be to get in a group. Don't miss this opportunity. Please do not miss this opportunity to connect in a life group. So dreaming big, right? Dreaming big today. From this moment on, it's all about acting bold. It's all about taking next steps. So let me pray for us before Julie closes this out. God, this is your dream. Revolution has been your dream. I've handed it off to you time and time again because I can't do it. We can't do it, but we know you can. This vision is your vision. We give it to you, and we know in giving it to you, the things we're dreaming about, you're going to do more than that. And we're going to give you all the credit for it. In Jesus' name.